special considerations to give to spray foam for just prep work as well that I want to mention. One is that apparently the temperature of the bottles is important. Now, this was a big issue because it's very cold now. It is like 0 degrees at night, even when we were doing the spraying, and sometimes we'd get 20 degrees during the day, which is like really cutting it close for whether you can spray foam the material. And so we were typically waiting till the afternoon anyway. We have a heated garage on site here, and so what we did is that in order to get the spray foam bottles to an internal temperature, not an external temperature, an internal temperature, and they're big, an internal temperature of like 25 degrees, we cranked the heat up in here to like 30 degrees. So if you get like a 30 degree, air temperature coming out of the heater, you're setting something on the floor is 25 degrees, even if the air temperature is 30 degrees. And we would leave them in there for like several days in order to heat up because it is a big volume of liquid. And so it's not, even if with your temperature gun, the surface of the tank is, 25 degrees, inside it's not. And so you want to make sure that the temperature is right. If the temperature is not right, your polyol is not going to come out at the same speed as the ISO is what I've heard, and so you're going to get a poor mixture. We had to wait until it was warm enough outside as well. That was a big concern for us, is that it's just too cold outside right now. So we were very hamstrung in our ability to set up things right for spray foam, but if you're doing this in the summer, you're going to have a much easier time. Just make sure that your tanks are actually warm enough and that you're keeping them at a warm kind of inside type temperature. 25 degrees or so would be nice. And your outside temperatures are a little bit more acceptable. I think more so the issue, rather than what you're spraying on being too cold, is that if it's kind of cold outside, your tanks cool down, especially with the smaller kits we ended up having to use. My tanks were cooling down way too quick. And they have heated blankets for that, but we didn't have that option, and so I had to kind of stop spraying in a few cases because I was like, the tanks are like 18 degrees now. They're not going to flow properly. That was a big concern. In cases where your tanks have been sitting for a long time, or in any case, really, you need to shake them up really well as well. They don't want you slamming them around, so what I was doing, I don't know if it's the right way to do it, was I was just putting the tank on an angle and then rocking it back and forth. They say to mix it for like 5 minutes, but in some cases I even forgot to mix, and it seemed to come out fine. I would say just make sure you're rocking them around for like a minute or something, and you should have most of the liquid in there mixed up. All of my spray foam kits, guys, ended up having too much ISO at the end. Now, I suppose they might be doing this on purpose just to make sure that all of your polyol comes out reacted, but ISO was the last thing to always come out of the hose. And this can cause a noticeable condition when you're doing your spray foam, and it's something that you really want to pay attention to. In all of my kits, I believe the ISO was colored red, and when you spray it and you start noticing that your spray foam looks really yellow and is kind of gooey and doesn't expand at all, that's where it's starting to get ISO rich. Most of the spray foam that I did came out white and then yellowed over time, but when it starts to come out yellow, kind of like a slightly mustardy yellow, you're ISO rich. And usually you can tell because you're starting to get bubbles and like in the polyol hose, and so you want to keep an eye for that. If it's ISO rich, you're going to have a very disgusting smell in your house. And like I say, that's where you're kind of getting into like you made a chemical disaster in your house. We had this happen several times because it was very dark inside the house. We have no windows, and especially with the small tanks, you can only spray so much before you end up ISO rich. And we were spraying kind of large sections, and then somehow there's some spots where I missed that were fairly large that were ISO rich. In those cases, if you're not able to cut out I don't know if this is the way to do it, but you can probably get away with just spraying over it with properly mixed spray foam, and you might be able to slightly react some of the ISO in there, but at the very least you are sealing it up, and so you won't have an odor problem. You don't want to have an ISO rich situation in your house though. The isocyanates, they are the really toxic part of the spray foam, and you're going to probably have release of volatile organic chemicals into your house for a very long time, stuff like formaldehyde. I did catch a whiff of the ISO smell when I passed by the house a couple times without a respirator, and it is a unique smell, and you can smell it. And if you smell something, you should take a peek around and see if there's anything if there's like a yellow spot somewhere on your spray foam. And if that's the case, put on your mask, maybe try wipe some of it off, and then spray over it. So you want to make sure that you keep you and your family safe inside of your house where you're using spray foam. I want to talk a bit about the nozzles in the Dow Froth Pak system. So apparently these things are like, they're metering them out as lightly as they can. We bought the 620 kit, like I say, which comes with no nozzles and comes with no gun. So when you buy the $800 Dow Froth Pak 620 kit that covers 620 board feet, you then also have to buy the $100 15-foot hose kit. There's also a 30-foot. I don't know how much that one costs. It comes with 10 nozzles. Now, 6 of those are cone nozzles, 4 of them are fan nozzles. You're probably going to use more fan nozzles than cone nozzles, I would think, because the fan nozzles are great for filling in between framing. They're perfect for that. Cone nozzles were great for getting in corners, I found. I use them a lot for that, and getting in tighter spots where I don't need it blowing all over the place. But I cannot manage to find these anywhere just by themselves, and because we bought so many kits, I was very, very concerned that we were going to run out of nozzles, and so I wasn't changing the nozzles at all. If I could avoid it, I did not change them. And bear in mind, you can't stop once you start using a nozzle, because if you stop, the foam in it hardens, and then it's garbage. So I just had to keep on going until I ran out of a tank, and then switch to another nozzle with the new tank as best I could. So that made it very, very rushed to do the work, and it might have reduced the quality of work that I did because I was so in a rush. But I don't know, I feel like when you're buying these $800 spray foam tanks, I wish they just threw in a couple nozzles right into the tank, because the amount of nozzles you're going to use is based upon how many tanks you buy, right? Makes sense? The amount of nozzles you use is not based on how many guns you buy, because you can use that gun kit for two pairs of tanks, or you can use it for 10 pairs of tanks, but they send you the same amount of nozzles with the 15-foot gun kit for any situation. So they should throw a couple in with the tanks. Dow, if you're watching this, which probably not, you should throw in a couple of these with each set of tank, not with the gun. That would make a lot more sense to me. And so as a result, we were really having a hard time trying to conserve these things, and we can't find refill kits anywhere. I've seen listings for them online, but they seem to be sold out. Maybe Dow is just discontinuing Froth Pak or something, I'm not sure, but it might just be because people do a lot of probably smaller projects with this, and so the 10 nozzles is very sufficient for a lot of people, I'm assuming. But for us, we are doing a substantially large project, really at the size that a lot of people would probably hire a contractor, but given the complexity of where I needed to spray, I decided to just do it myself would be a better option. But I'm liking it so far, it wasn't too hard. Anyway, thanks guys. Spray foam disposal is an interesting one. I had to do a bit of research as to what you want to do, because the isocyanate that's left in your tank, which was left in all of my tanks, isocyanate was the last material left, it is considered hazardous waste, and it is a hazardous material. And so you cannot, and I would highly not recommend dumping the canisters in the garbage, especially full with isocyanate. You want to take this seriously. Isocyanate is toxic, and you do not want it to be released into the environment. So there are manufacturer recommendations and some information online on how to get rid of the isocyanate. If you have polyol left, for some reason, what I would recommend is mixing it with the isocyanate. So with all your tanks with a nozzle on them, empty them out into a garbage bin and produce as much foam as you can until you have just isocyanate coming out. And then the essential idea is with the isocyanate, you want to get it out into its own garbage bin, I would say, and then do your own research, but you can mix it with water, ammonia, and alcohol in a certain quantity and cure it into polyurea. The gist of this is that you don't want to dump it as a liquid. As a liquid, it is still isocyanate and is very toxic to humans and animals and the environment. If you turn it into a solid, it is polyurea, which is much less damaging to the environment and can just be thrown away as household waste, apparently. Your mileage may vary depending on what country you're in, but in general, I do want to emphasize, do some research, try to cure it into a solid, and do not let it be released into the environment. After you've emptied all of your tanks, what I did is I just made a little sawdust bed, or you can make a kitty litter bed inside of a garbage bag and put them in there, because they will kind of keep foaming and releasing a little bit for a while. And once you have this and just leave it in its garbage bag for a couple days, you can just go dispose of it as scrap metal, the remaining canisters. Guys, do be careful. Do not release isocyanates into the environment. It is hazardous waste. Make sure that you cure it into a solid, and then it's just household waste. It's safe. Guys, due to the spray foam and isocyanate shortage, to which we were unaware, we had to really go through the ringer to get enough spray foam to even get a layer on everything of the house. We started by buying Dow Froth Pak 600 kits, We then had to get Dow Froth Pak 600 expired kits. And then when we couldn't find any of those anywhere else, or any 600 board foot kit anywhere in the world, we had to buy Dow Froth Pak 200 kits, which are like way more expensive relative to chemical yield. So then once we couldn't find any more of those, we finally broke down and went for an off-brand, because Dow is a name brand. We went for the off-brand Handi Pack, or Handi Foam, I believe they're called.
Handi Foam.
Handi Foam. We can't, once again, they're out of 600 board foot yielding sets, but we found 200 board foot yielding sets, and they're quite a bit cheaper than Dow Froth Pak kits, interestingly. Now, we were quite genuinely surprised with how nice they were. I think they actually have some big advantages over the Dow Froth Pak kit, namely that you can still find them at the moment in the 205 board foot yield, but they have some other big advantages. In the first case, though, I want to mention a disadvantage that I did notice, which is that the Handi Foam kits the foam that you get is slightly more brittle than Dow Froth Pak. Dow Froth Pak's foam is very, very strong and very stiff. I don't think I have any examples of it around, but the Handi foam is kind of like crumbly, slightly more crumbly and crunchy if you push it. It's fine, but it is less strong. But on the other hand, it also has a higher R value. Now, that to me kind of makes sense, that it might actually have more air in it, or more carbon dioxide that gets reacted inside of it. So it has a little bit less solids and more gases, which would make it higher insulation, but also makes it a little bit less strong. In our case, this is fine because we have a Dow Froth Pak layer on almost all of our framing, so it's going to give us the stiffness, whereas the Handi foam, we used it in a couple spots just to add a bit more foam where we need it. So that's a good mixture. But I want to show you guys the big advantage of the Handi foam, which we really like. And it is cheaper, it's substantially cheaper. We'll show some MSRPs maybe on the screen. But these are the Dow Froth Pak nozzles. This is their older Froth Pak nozzle, and then some of the newer kits that we bought came with this extended nozzle. So this might be a slightly newer variant intended to promote better mixing. I didn't notice any issues with these, but what I did find frustrating, as we may have mentioned with the Dow Froth Pak kits, is that especially the large ones, they don't come with any nozzles. They only come with a nozzle with the gun kit, which has its own problems, as we'll say. But you'll notice that they have a fan nozzle here. They have a separate nozzle for doing a cone spray, and it just has a round orifice at the end. So they have a certain amount of fan nozzles and a certain amount of cone nozzles, meaning that you kind of have to ration them depending on what you're going to do. The Handi Foam kit, this is a used one. This is a dual-purpose nozzle. The end is a fan tip, but if you cut it off before, it becomes a cone tip. So plenty of nozzles were included in the Handi Foam kit, and they are usable for either fan or cone, depending on what you need, meaning that you don't have to ration them nearly to the extent of the Dow Froth Pak. I really, really liked that. The gun design was easy to use. The attachment of the nozzles is very easy to use, and the nozzles are just far better designed. You don't have to ration them. They are usable for both purposes. So we really like that. That combined with the cost, with the availability, and with slightly higher R value, though weaker strength, makes them a really, really valid thing for you guys to consider using. So yeah, I would recommend checking out Handi Foam and seeing if you like them. Guys, is also super user-friendly in an interesting way, which is that with the Dow Froth Pak, the nozzle already comes connected and everything, but you have to open up the box and take it all out with its little handle. Handi Foam is actually really, really clever. The 200 kit, you actually pretty much just leave it in the box. It only has a couple of opening panels. You have the top panel to open up the valves for the A and B tank, and then a front panel which gets you the gun. So actually you just carry it around in its cardboard box the whole time. The end result is that the Handi Foam takes like 5 seconds to set up. It's really, really cool actually. That's another benefit that I quite liked about it. I hope you learned something, or at the very least had a little laugh with us at our misfortune with dealing with spray foam. We had to deal with the shortages, we had to deal with the inclement weather, and we got a chance to test a few different brands and types of spray foam, and we did this all as a first timer. Please subscribe to our channel and like our video. Our next video is going to be really exciting. We're going to build a 3-inch hand-built wooden, fully insulated exterior door. So we hope to join you guys for that video.